All right, team. Welcome to the Rabbit Show. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So let us know where you're joining from and what is it? Is it morning, evening, night at your end? Today we are talking to someone special, Sida Shen. It's not his first time on the Rabbit Show. Obviously, we've spoken to Sida sometime back in. Obviously, we had an interesting discussion with him around cloud analytics, FinOps, and much more. And due because of the public demand, we brought Sida back on the Rabbit Show. He's one of the very interesting person I know in data. So today we'll definitely be discussing about various things around user-facing analytics, the challenges, data and analytics, and much more. So feel free to bring in your questions that you have for Sida. But as you all know, we always do some giveaways, and this time we have a huge giveaway that we're doing. That is an iWatch that we'll be giving away. The rules are basically you should have registered for the event. I have already seen a few registrations on the registration page. Then you need to ask question and put in hashtag CelerData in the chat. I already see Arthur putting in CelerData. So nice one. But we will be announcing the winners in the third week of August. So keep an eye on the Rabbit Show newsletter. All right. Real quick, we should get Sida up here now. Hey Sida, welcome to the Rabbit
Hey,
Show. Such a
hey, how
pleasure
are
to
you
have
doing?
you back. I'm very
Yeah,
well. How are
great.
you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun last time. We talked about cloud analytics and FinOps and how to actually save money on the cloud and how not to go bankrupt, right? And that was a lot of fun. So really look forward to this one.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. This is super interesting because obviously, I've heard a lot about user-facing analytics, and also everyone has like a different perspective to it. But we'll get into the detailings. But for our audience joining us today, why not start with your introduction, Sida?
Yeah. So I've been on this show and I love Ravit and it was a lot of fun. And you guys before joined before, welcome. And if it's first time seeing me, my name is Sida Shen and I am a product marketing manager at CelerData. And CelerData is actually we're a database company. So we have a open source OLAP database, real time OLAP database called Starox. It's open source. It's right here. It should be right here. Starox. And it's open source on GitHub. And it's really good at doing like real time high concurrency analytics.
Hmm.
And about myself, I've been working in the data infra space for a pretty long time now. And I've always worked on databases. So a
Hmm.
lot of like compute engines, a lot of storage engines.
Yeah.
And as roles, I wore a lot of hats during my career. I was in a technical SA. I was in the field, and I was
Hmm.
designing storage engines as a PM, and in database. And now I'm doing technical marketing. Yeah, so
Wow.
so I hope I can bring some interesting perspective into this subject, which is
Yeah.
user-facing analytics today.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for that sharing those details. Obviously, multiple hat, wearing multiple hat kind of puts you in that spot where I always ask you the difficult questions because you have like a 360-degree understanding about not only just the business but also the technical perspectives, and
Hmm.
that makes me happy because I can learn a lot and our audience as well. And that's one of the reasons, the last time that when we spoke about FinOps analytics in the cloud, it was so much fun. The audience loved it. And this time, obviously, I thought, why not user-facing analytics? But for those who want to learn, can you tell us what exactly is user-facing analytics?
Yes. So, user analytics, a lot of people has a different definitions, more definitions,
Hmm.
but all in all, user-facing analytics is a process of really democratizing your data
Mhm.
and the data insight you can mine from your data, right? And this is by making your fresh, up to date data, so real time data available to your users, and so the user doesn't have to even be technical
Mhm.
to grasp, to do analytics, right? And let's take for example, right? So like you probably used Airbnb before, right? And
Mhm.
pull out your phone and put in a location and a date, and that's gonna be the filter, right? And in the
Right.
backend, Airbnb gonna take that all of that information, filter it, and look at all of the hotels or like homes, right?
Yeah.
And aggregate them and maybe sort them, right? And display them to you, right? And that's some sort of analytics, OLAP analytics doing on the backend, right? And I'm a user, and so that's basically what user-facing analytics is, right?
Okay. Got it. Got it. Pretty
Yeah.
clear and pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, and also, like for user-facing analytics, there are like
Mhm.
different aspects, right? There's different kinds of user-facing analytics. So here, I kind of want to kind of characterize that into two kinds. One is kind of like external facing user-facing analytics. So external facing analytics, and one is internal facing analytics, right? And for external facing, it's like, like for example, let's take example of a fitness app, right? And it's gonna record like how many step
Right.
you've done, and your heart rate, or other monitoring metrics,
Exactly.
in time series, right? And then aggregate that result and show it to you whenever you need it, right? And that is basically, kind of like external facing user, or some people call it customer facing analytics, right?
Sure.
And for those, yes, uh so question.
No, no. Go
Oh,
ahead. Please.
okay. Yeah, and for those internal facing analytics, let's take, the same fitness app, but this time is not really for external users, right? Actually using the app, it's for maybe the marketing team, right? And it wants to see like how many users are using the product, right? How long they're using the product, right? The product team might needs to find out, I built a new feature, right? Is my customers or my users loving it, right? How long they're using it, and what is the churn rate, and those kind of stuff, right? And provides insight to internal teams within the organization, right? And so this is more like those internal facing user facing analytics.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
think this good explanation in terms of the different types of user facing analytics as well. So thanks for sharing that. Real quick, I know there are a few questions which have already started coming in. Like I had a similar question around that I see from YouTube is around the UFA, which is user facing analytics, in the differentiation from other data analytics. But here's this question I'll pick from the audience. So, how would you define user facing analytics in layman terms, which you've already done, but how does it differentiate from traditional data analytics method? And what I would like to add, Sida, is not only just the traditional bit, but the current data analytics methods as well. How is it different?
Yes. So, yeah. So there are a lot of aspects. I mean, from the highest level, right? So, user-facing analytics does not really require your users to have the technical skill, right? He doesn't even have to know how to write SQL script, or as
Hmm.
building an application. Doesn't have to do it. There's always some kind of front end application, right? And is for internal use, it's always like a BI tool. Sometimes it's open source, like Airbnb's Apache open superset, right?
Right.
And those BI tools, and or it's sometimes external facing, or it's a SaaS provider, right? And they build their own kind of front end application, right? And user can just use that application and input some parameter, and it's going to generate the result. And that's different than other kind of analytics, like say ad hoc analytics, right? and where data scientists, they write their own complicated SQL script because they want to learn a specific thing on the data, or they want to do some exploration on the data, right? And
Hmm.
these two are dramatically different.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Thanks for sharing that. We also have a comment here from Rachel, and she's asking where can she get those stickers.
Oh, this this I got it from Amazon.
Awesome. Obviously, you've given us a good understanding about the user-facing analytics and how does it differ from the traditional data in the current ones as well. So what I would also want to get more deeper into it around the components of user facing analytics, because
Yes.
I'm pretty sure when you talk about Airbnb or if you talk about an health app, there are so many factors and so many components that would actually come into the play. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we just covered what is user-facing analytics, right? I think a lot of the audience are curious about, how can I build it, right? What kind of component is around that,
Exactly.
right? That's the question, right? Okay. And so yeah, so for the component, I think the biggest part is your data source, right? Or the foundation is your data source, right?
Hmm.
And that can be anywhere, basically. In a big corporation, some clients I work with, they have data all scattered all around the place. That can be, in a Kafka topic when it's real
Hmm.
time streamed in, right? Or it can be in your transactional database, which is, serving some kind of online your business, actually supporting a business, right? And and for some, they're probably in some, object storage or object storage, S3 storage, or HDFS, right? For those
Right.
are not that real time, not that up to
Hmm.
date, but they can still be
Hmm.
useful for your users, right? And the first part is kind of the data source, and moving up. So like the data is not really ready for to be analyzed, especially for users, right? For the user we're talking about now, right? And not that's 100% ready. So you need to build some like transformation layer between that and whatever is after or downstream, right? And that transformation layer is a lot of data cleaning, right? Transform them into a tabular format, or a semi-structured format, right?
Hmm.
And ready to be analyzed. And also with despite the the cleaning and the format change, and sometimes the schema needs to change too, right? And this is a step if you want to do some kind of pre-computation, right? You do some pre-aggregation, or a lot of people do a lot of de-normalization, which is harmful. I'm gonna talk about that maybe later sometime. But and that's the place to do it, right? And
Right.
the third component, I would say, is your application, right? Your application actually is running on the front end, so your application, the user is actually interacting with, right? And this for those like internal facing use cases, like dashboards, reports, mainly dashboards. And this is all like BI tools, right? Those can be open source BI tools, such as um Superset, Apache Superset, or those
Right.
commercial ones like Tableau, right? Or sometimes even Excel. People use Excel for this too, and connect it to a
Yeah.
database and do analytics on that, right? And here's the fourth part. I think the final part is your database, and this
Hmm.
is where all of your data is going to be stored and analyzed. At least it's going to get fetched by the database, right? So the application layer takes user input, right? And maybe some parameters, some filtering, right? Like for a
Yeah.
logistic
Yeah.
company, you want to figure out, like how many orders are late in the greater San Francisco area, right? And you put in these parameters in there, and the application is going to generate the SQL queries and send it to the OLAP database, which is
Right.
going to execute those queries, right? And yeah, and for OLAP database, it's really important. It's what we do. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty biased.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's gonna really impact your users user experience, right? And this is a four component, I think.
No, I think those are thanks for sharing all those four in detail, because it kind of helps to us to understand and get into the breadth of user facing analytics and what are the components. Do you have like I would love to jump on a use case as well, but just before that, one question here from Uday that I see is, how do you ensure data accuracy, as it's very important to have accurate data in user facing analytics? Very good question.
How do you ensure data accuracy is very important, right? So there are a lot of ways of doing it, right? And data governance is definitely something that's very important, right?
Mhm.
And before you would ingest the data, and there will be some algorithm check if the data is correct, right? That's the old way of doing it. Been doing it for a long time. And for now, there's actually something called a lake house, right? So you actually, that's what Starbucks, the CelerData supports too, right? And so what is the easiest way of keeping your data correct? Is to keep it in one place, right? You don't copy it. The more you copy, the more you need to check, right? So you just keep
So,
your single source of truth somewhere, and on the cloud is always, some kind of object storage, right? Like for AWS is S3, and for Azure is that blob storage thing, right?
yeah.
And yeah, you keep all of the data in there on there, and you build your OLAP database or data warehouse directly on the S3 storage without moving it, right? And like for say Starbucks, right? So what we're building, it's a database. You can ingest data into it,
Yeah.
but you can also take your data on your S3 storage and just
Mhm.
directly and definitely build some table schema on top of that, right? Some data lake schema, table format like Apache Iceberg or Hoodie, right? Or
Yeah.
even just use AWS Glue to create a metadata for it, right? And you
Mhm.
just sit Starbucks directly on top of it. So analyze the data directly from the S3 storage, so you don't move it. You don't move it. There's no chance it's gonna be wrong. So yeah, I hope it answered your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's how, obviously you need to keep the data accuracy at that high level where, and it does play a very important role. So, for sure. Uh, just jumping into something that we were talking about, obviously you mentioned about the components of user facing analytics. So, quick question here in terms of, as I'm pretty sure a lot of folks that a lot of companies or clients or customers that you might be implementing this for, how are there any tailored components as well, like apart from the four that you mentioned, or maybe it's just like, oh, in this case we might just need two of these components and we'll be able to build this for them, or any other use case that you would like to share, Sida, around it?
A use case from I've seen the industry for user facing analytics. Is that
Hmm.
what the question was? Okay.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think I can think of some examples. I think the first one, let's make it external facing, right? I'll pick an external facing one. So there is a social media company called 小红书 or Red.
Hmm.
Right? They have I think 300 million monthly active user, and
Nice.
their platform is almost all free, right? It's so how do they make money? They run ads, right? And they have a lot of advertisers that puts ads on their platform. That's how YouTube make money too, right? And right, and they have a lot of advertisers, and they build this kind of like a user facing application, right? Or like analytics platform, a portal, right? Their
Hmm.
advertiser can just log in and look at how their ads is performing in real time,
Hmm.
aggregate get a result in real time, right? Um, and use that information to tune their strategy, right?
Right.
And the immediate feedback, and so they always ensure that the advertisers themselves, they're doing a good job, right? And the next one, I probably do a kind of more like internal facing analytics, right? And this is Tencent Games. Tencent Games is actually the gaming company that built, not built, but owns PUBG and
PUBG, right?
League of Legends, right? Two are probably the biggest title in the world, right?
Yeah.
And they have, I think, hundreds of like actually more than 200 of titles. They have
Mm.
many studios and gaming studios that builds those, and they have many teams
Wow.
that works on it, right? Because there are hundreds of games, right? And
Mm.
they've struggled to find a standardized metric to measure all of the games the same,
Right.
right? And because they run events in the games and promotions and a lot of different stuff, right? And sometimes it's difficult to measure, and so it's difficult to do well, right? Before it was every team was doing their own, and that could be problematic, right? So you can touch up the data to make it kind of look good, and by the end of the year, it's probably not really that good, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and they took Starbucks, so what we built, and they build kind of like a standardized metric, kind of like a platform, right? And
Mm.
you can, engineers build those dashboards on there, and and report templates, right? And you can just go on there and look at the dashboard and learn what's going on, or you can take those report templates and
Yeah.
some parameter, and you get the instant result, right? And they can kind of tune them, get their game strategy, game like marketing strategy or whatnot
Nice.
in real time, right? By looking at the up-to-date data, right?
Mm.
And yeah, and maybe I'll slap another one in there. Airbnb, right? Airbnb is one of our
Yeah.
more successful use cases, and they have a metric platform that's called Minerva,
Mm.
right? And that metric platform holds petabytes of data. I think last time I checked a year ago was like 6 petabytes. Not sure about now, but yeah, 6 petabytes of data. And
Mm.
they standardize all of the metric and keeping all the data in one place, right? And the same thing was what similar thing was what Tencent was doing, right? And they build dashboards and all kinds of applications on there, so their users, non-technical users, can get access to all of the data. Now, of course, under compliance, right? Under compliance
Yeah.
rules and
Exactly.
access rules, permissions, and get access, technically get access to all of the data that's available inside of
Mm.
Airbnb. And that's a great thing. I mean, they have an article out there, that how did this platform help them got through the COVID-19 crisis. Their hospitality, and they were struggling. They're supposed to be struggling, but they survived, right?
Mm.
And yeah, that was a pretty good case. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably the three.
I think those are pretty interesting use cases. You kind of covered a good ground in terms of obviously talking about the gaming industry, Airbnb, and the other one, which is around the e-commerce. So it makes sense. Also, can you tell us, since we are on this topic of business, obviously I would want to learn a little about how can user facing analytics help business to boost revenue and profitability. Like one is where you mentioned about the advertisements can could come in, so that could be one thing, but uh, are there any other ways where you can leverage user facing analytics?
Yes, and yeah, so the question was, how does user facing analytics boost
Yep.
revenue, or
Yep.
help your company boost revenue or profit, right?
Right.
And yeah, so there's two parts, right? So what user facing is it's it puts data at the fingertip of your user, right?
Right.
And that's both for external use and internal use, right? And for external use, I think is a little easier to grasp, because let's take that fitness app, for example, right? We talked about in the beginning.
Hmm.
You have a fitness app, and I exercise, and it tells me how well I'm doing, right? And by giving me, at least for me, the up-to-date aggregated data of how am I doing, I get a sense of accomplishment, right? And I
Right.
know whether I'm doing well, right? And this is really going to increase my stickiness to the platform, right? And it's gonna help get me to use more. Addictive
Right.
gamification, right? It's like gamification, and like this is for like a 2C customer case, but for those as advertisers, right? And that actually, this for me is just, it's just for fun, right? But for them, if they're running ads, they're spending money every single second, right? And they
Exactly.
want the ads to do well, right? And they want to have the latest result, and in order to tune their marketing strategy, right, in real time, right? And yeah, so if you can provide them with this, make them successful, and they can make you successful, and more people are gonna run ads on your platform if all of them are doing well, right? And but for internal use case, it's a little more like harder to grasp, because it doesn't
Hmm.
make revenue directly, right? But it boosts a lot of efficiency in the company, right? Like, say
Hmm.
for a non-technical person, like in that fitness app, that marketing team, right? I don't suppose I don't write SQL, right? If I want to do something, I need to reach out to my data scientist, and my data scientist reach out to my data engineer, right? Build a whole pipeline that they write the SQL script and mine the data in. I just sit here wait for 2 hours doing nothing, right? And that's not good, right? And what I'm
Exactly.
doing is probably time sensitive too. I'm probably doing some sort of marketing, or those time sensitive job, right? And having a fast swift system end to end, it can really help with efficiency too, and thus saving money and increasing your profitability.
Yeah, I think yes. One quick question I said I'm just looking at here is from first of all, thanks for sharing those points. In another, since we are on this topic of business, yours one from YouTube. So how can someone, especially those not from a data background, get started understanding and leveraging user-facing analytics in their roles or businesses? Very important question, I feel.
Yes, and in the organization, if you don't really have the technical skill, right? This is what user-facing analytics is built for, right? It's for the
Hmm.
folks that do not, that their role does not require any technical ability, right? So look
Exactly.
for those, within your permission, of course. Look for those applications or dashboards and reports, and just be familiar with data, right? You don't,
Hmm.
with the technology today, you don't really have to be fluent or even know what is a select is in SQL, right? You don't have to do that, right? So
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
company, there's always something built there. You just need to find them and learn about the data before everybody else do, so you have an edge, right?
Yeah, nice one. I think that's a good question. Thanks for sharing that. Sida, in terms of since we've already spoken about what user-facing analytics is, you've shared some use cases. How does it differentiate as well? But also, while I kind of wonder, also while implementing user-facing analytics, there might be a lot of challenges as well that companies face, and obviously as a vendor, you might be facing too. So, can you
Yeah.
tell us more about that?
Okay, so the challenges in user facing, because I build databases, so it might get a little
Yeah,
technical. So if there's any question,
yeah,
please raise
sure.
them. Right. So yeah, so first thing I see is the problem with general solutions around analytics or real time user facing analytics is the pre processing pipeline, right? And user facing often really demands real time data, streaming data, right? And to up
Mhm.
to 5-10 seconds freshness, or sometimes it's more than that, it's useless.
Yeah.
And so it's not, the value of data decreases as the time goes on, right? And everything needs to be fast, but a lot of the real time olap databases doesn't do joins very well in SQL, right? The join operation, two table join, left join, right? And because join is a very difficult thing to optimize, right?
Mhm.
And optimizing that takes a long time and a lot of effort, right? And so a lot of the databases doesn't really just don't do it, and they depend on the user to do what the normalization in their pre-processing pipeline. The normalization is basically what is normalized, several tables, right? Denormalize, just pre-join those 5 tables or however ever tables into a big flat table before in your pipeline, right?
Mhm.
And doing this is actually pretty harmful, because doing this in batch, batch job, like in a Spark job, it's okay. It's not as bad, right? Because you
Right.
have the time to to do them in large batches. And with Spark is it's stage by stage computation is pretty stable, right? But doing that in a stream fashion, like with a stream processing tool, uh, that can be pretty darn difficult. And
Yeah.
managing those stateful stream processing jobs can be really a pain, right? And it causes so much problem, and it requires a lot of like actual engineering skills, right?
Mhm.
And so I think this is why the US, not a lot of company are chasing after real time analytics, right? Because this whole like pre-processing pipeline, this denormalization pipeline is just so expensive to build, implement, and maintain, right? And this is kind of the first the biggest problem I'm seeing, right, with drawing performance and work around a denormalization in stream, right? And the second one I would say is the real time part, right? A lot of the solutions, they can do real time okay, right? They can
Mhm.
provide a minute or 30 seconds, if the data is append only, which means that there
Yeah.
is no data update or data upsert, right? Because with OLAP, we want fast queries, right? So we always store the data in a columnar format, right? In
Yeah.
big columnar chunks, right? And but updates are all like rows. so
Mhm.
that's a very very difficult thing to be started with, right? And a lot of uh the solutions for data upsert or data update, if they even support it, they use a mechanism called merge on read. You can look it up on
Mhm.
what it is. It's basically writing your data files into different versions, and you have a compaction job that's kind of merge those different versions together, right, in the backend,
Nice.
right? But it can never keep up, right? So doing read is still doing the compaction on the backend. So it actually really hurts the performance. So it doesn't really work in a real time, kind of actual real time, like 10-second freshness, this kind of scenario, right? And
Yeah.
so real time upsert, how do we do that? And that's kind of like the second concern or I'm seeing, right? And the third one, I would say this is probably the last one,
Mhm.
is with high concurrency, right? With user facing analytics, there's no one big difference is only there's more of us, right? It's only I'm not the only one that's doing it, right? It's
Yeah.
probably like 1,000 or 100,000 of me, doing it, right? And it's for high concurrency, a lot of the database can't keep up when the concurrency is low, but they kind of lack uh, ways of dealing with like high concurrency OLAP workloads, right?
Yeah.
And this one thing about like user facing is that there's always some sort of application or BI tools in the front end generating SQL, right? And the SQL
Right.
template, we wrote it. We some engineer does it, right? So you actually has some certain control over how the SQL gonna look like. It's not gonna be like 100% random, right? Like with a like ad hoc query, like some data scientist just wrote a 2,000 line query. That's not gonna happen, right? It's all gonna follow some sort of format, right? So there are a lot of opportunities to make those like caching median results or those
Yeah.
kind of optimizations, but other solutions are just not doing, and they rely on the user to add more instances or deploy multiple clusters or other doing pre-computation, right? Doing pre like building a pipeline, denormalization pipeline, or you calculate your result beforehand. They rely on the
Yeah.
user to do that, but instead of they handle it, right? And I think that is the third problem I'm seeing. Yeah.
Okay, these are interesting challenges that you've kind of shared. Obviously, starting about the touching a bit about around the real time and mutable data, low latency, and then obviously wrapping it up with high concurrency workload. So that makes it super interesting. Also, I know there's this interesting question from All right, this one on LinkedIn. What are KPIs in user-facing analytics? User interfacing analytics.
User interfacing analytics. I'm not really uh user interfacing analytics. I am not really that familiar with this term. So
Yeah, yeah. I
so
think if HA can, actually just have it a little, put more context to that, that
yeah,
would be
if you can
interesting.
put more, yeah.
But there's another one here, which is around how important is user experience design in UFA, and do you believe it plays a crucial role in ensuring users can derive insights effectively? Like you've touched a little on it, but do you want to share something more about it, Sida?
Yeah, yeah. Around user facing, because I actually did industrial engineering. I did a lot of yeah, user experience kind of stuff. So I'm probably biased again. So this is very important. So yeah, so user experience is a lot of things in user facing. It's different components, right? The user can feel like probably not the data ingestion part, transformation
Mhm.
part, but they can definitely feel how your interface is looking, right? And this
Right,
is the one
right,
part everybody knows about. And the second part is really like how fast the response, right? And
exactly.
because this is not like submitting a Hadoop job, right? You
Mhm.
expect to go to get pizza and get a coffee and take a nap for 15 hours and come back and still working, right? And that's normal. But for this, you just hitting the button, right? You put in three parameters, hitting the button, you want the result to come back immediately, right?
Right,
Interactive query. So that's something like sub-second or in the low seconds, right? And you always want to have that, right? Because your user doesn't know how much data is behind it. They don't know the technology,
exactly.
right? So
True.
you need to have that experience, because there's no excuse, right? Because they don't know what's going on in the back end. So I think user experience is the most important thing in user facing analytics. You're trying to design and implement it. And all the things we talk about are for user experience, right?
Yeah, I think that is very important indeed. So thanks for sharing your experiences. Also, quickly jumping on, since you've spoken about the challenges as well. How is the industry actually addressing those challenges? If you can touch a little on that, would be interesting.
Yes. So yeah, so it probably be a little technical, but it
Yeah,
can
sure.
be useful, right? We build this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the first problem, just recall, is denormalization and on the fly joins, right? And with the technology evolved for so many years, there are actually databases that us Starbucks, and
Mhm.
we actually are optimized to do joins on the fly, right? We utilize a lot of stuff, right? Like we're built on a true MPP, massively parallel processing framework, right? So we can support all kinds of kind of join algorithms and to run them
Mhm.
very efficiently, right? And we're building C++, right? So we can those SIMD instructions, we can take advantage of that, right? And we
Yep.
have other kind of like deeper optimization too, right? We have a runtime filter, right? We can during query execution, during a join, we can prune data out of there, so we can scan less data and execute process on less data, right? There are many optimizations that exists. So doing join on the fly actually works now. A lot of people don't believe me, but they try and they say, "Wow!" But it's actually possible now, right? And with even with some scenario where the join is just a concurrency, it's like 200, on OLAP, that's pretty high, 200, 500,000, right, or more, right? And this probably still have to do denormalization, but you don't do it
Yep.
like in a stream processing job, right? What a lot of the actually we're not the only one, but another product also offers this, is a partial update, right? So you see,
Mhm.
you have like two tables, you have two Kafka topics, right? And you want to uh, you want to denormalize them into a flat table, right? And what people have been doing before was in the Flink job, and they join it there and you into a big flat table and insert into the database, right? And
Right.
now database actually supports like partial update, like this job updates half of this table and the other job
Yeah.
updates half of that table. And so
Interesting.
doing denormalization within the database, and this is becoming more of a common practice too, right? Just replacing what stream processing is doing, right? And that is
Yeah.
complete, right? And so this is for for the pre-processing pipeline problem,
Yeah.
right? And for, I think the second one I mentioned was real time real time
Real
upsert
time.
real time
Yeah.
upsert, right? And yeah, so and now the industry are going into a kind of, before was a lot of like merge on read. So when you
Hmm.
read, it merges the different data versions into one, right? And now actually people are building like primary key indexes, right? uh, that's actually like, at least I know two of the solutions in the industry has this feature, right? So you have
Hmm.
a primary key index, right? And that actually stores where this primary key, where this role is stored in your storage engine, specifically where it's
Okay.
stored. So all of the upsert, update, data delete are handled at data ingestion, right? So they're not at read or any compaction job in the backend anymore, right?
Yeah.
And this is really thanks to the advancement of solid state drive. So hard drives are fast enough to do that now, right? So we can actually
Exactly.
do those data update upserts, like at ingestion, synchronously at ingestion. So the query speed
Hmm.
is not affected if you have shorter intervals, right? And with this, we can easily do like 5 to 10 second data freshness on the database side.
Nice.
So the
Nice.
overall end-to-end pipeline, you can control that in within 10 seconds. That's including the query, right? Including the query,
Mhm.
including the ingestion and everything, right? And yes, and any question, if you have any questions, just raise it. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
this is, yeah, so this is for kind of like real time upsert, right? And the third one is probably going to be uh, the high concurrency problem, right? The high concurrency problem. So the industry, a lot of the solution, or a lot of the users before they talk to my team, is that they were doing a lot of pre-computation, right? And because their queries are running slow, when like 10,000 users hit, right, they're running slow, so they just build this pipeline, and they anticipate what the user gonna put in the SQL, what it's going to look like, and they pre-compute, right, and build those pipelines. There's not good, right? Like I mentioned before, like for user-facing analytics, the structure of the query is actually pretty uh it's pretty structured, right? It's not that out of whack, right? Because they all
Mhm.
come from some kind of application or some kind of BI tool that your team or the engineering team has built, right? And so there are a lot more ways to handle high concurrency workloads, right? Like intermediate result cache, right? Um, like a result cache is basically, you cache the final result, right? So the
Mhm.
actual output of the result. If your query is different, any sort of different, like your data changed or your SQL is a little bit different, it's not going to work, right? And that is really useful for folks like me. I just like a button, I like to click on it for 15 times for no reason, and that can help with that. But for
Mhm.
actual like uh like a dashboard or like a report that has parameters, it's not going to work, right? And like for Starrocks, it actually has a like an intermediate result cache feature, right?
Mhm.
So it cache not the final result, but the intermediate result. And it's going to accelerate the query even if the queries are not identical or the data is
Yep.
changed or a lot of things, right? And this is becoming a trend in the industry too. I see one other solution that's also implementing this uh, already. And yeah, and these are all on the database side, but all of these can really ultimately affect user experience, right?
Got it. I think those are good ways to obviously address the challenges as well. So thanks for sharing that. But also, just another quick question here, and it's more around the evaluating as well the user-facing analytics. So how do you evaluate UFA systems? How does that happen?
Yes, I think the first step is always, evaluate what you need, right?
Mhm.
And especially for user facing, there are a lot of fancy words like real time, up to like 5 seconds, 1 second streaming. Sometimes you, they want streaming, right? But they actually don't. They actually don't need that real time. Probably 10 seconds enough. Probably five minutes is enough.
Got
Probably one hour is enough, right? So
it.
first,
Right.
you actually have to define what you actually need, what will actually
Mhm.
benefit your business, right? Don't overdo it, because in real time, in user facing, it's easy to overdo it because all of these will sound good, but they come at a
Mhm.
cost. We
Exactly.
are, database builders, and we make them cheaper. But if you don't need a feature, I'm gonna say no. You don't need that feature. You don't need to use that, right? You don't want
Exactly.
to, yeah, to overdo it, right? And also like for user facing, you want to look at like, is your query actually analytical query? Are those group by queries, or are they actual like CPU intensive query, or they're disk intensive query, which means that they're heavy on the CPU, means they're more group by, more joins, right? Heavier on the disk means that it's scanning a lot of data, doing a lot of like
Mhm.
select where, those point queries, right? And those can be very different too, right? So pick your tools based on what kind of query you're running, right? And that's very important, right? So if you're running analytical queries, right,
Yeah.
and you want to look for a database, right, you want to test performance, right, and it's not going to be enough, but it's good to start with standardized test sets, right? And there is a SSB test set, and there is a TBCH test set, and there's a TBCDS test set. And you can search them up on Google. I think SSB data set is more like those user facing dashboards, right? And they're simpler, they're more in structure, and you can run them in high concurrency, and just see how the database is performing uh on the on the higher level, right? And TBCH is more for those data scientists ad hoc queries, right? Those are more like the queries actual data scientists writes, long, complicated, right? And TBCDS is more like those ETL style, very complex queries, right? And for user facing, you probably want to take a look at SSB first. And SSB actually has a variant
Mhm.
too. There's a multi-table SSB test set, and there is a single table SSB test set. If you don't want to do demoralization, always test on the multi-table SSB. Start with that, right? And after you've done that, you have a basic understanding of how your choices are working, right? You probably
Mhm.
eliminate a few of those. Doesn't do join, right? And right, it's time to start your POC, and always test with your real data, right? And because it's standard test set can give you some sort of idea of how the system is doing, how the
Mhm.
database is, but it's never the same as your real data, because with data skew, right? How does the database handle with dirty data, and just not imbalanced data? And is there
Exactly.
ways to distribute the data the way that best fits your scenario, your data? And that is very important too. So always spend a lot of time like evaluating and testing on your own data, on your own scenario, right? And run them in the concurrency that's going to be in the production system, right? Not
Right.
all that. Yeah, you hit it with one query, it's five, it's probably 500 milliseconds. You hit it with 1,000 at the same time, it's probably not going to be 500, right? The cost is going to go up, and a lot of the database, they don't even scale that well. We do, but they don't. A lot of them probably don't even scale that well, right?
Mhm.
You always want to test on the concurrency that's in your production environment, probably even higher, right? Like Xiaohongshu, when they tested us, the ad tech company,
Yeah.
their peak they're like in on a normal day, their QPS is around like in the high hundreds, 500, like OLAP. That's pretty
Mhm.
high already, right?
Yeah.
And peak, they're probably gonna peak around like 1,000. But in their POC with their real data, they hit 10,000 QPS in their POC, right? And always test thoroughly because in OLAP is a pretty complicated piece of technology, and a lot
Mhm.
of things can go wrong. So always test thoroughly. When you're trying to search for your
Yeah.
next real-time user-facing OLAP database, right? And that's all I have.
Awesome. No, I think these are good points. Obviously, with the technical bit as well, you've shared so much around it, around the evaluating, the user-facing analytics systems. It is super helpful. But Sida, I think we've covered a good ground today in terms of the user-facing analytics, the challenges, data, real time. Obviously, you've also spoken about. A few case studies that you shared are pretty interesting and great questions from the audience as well. But I'm pretty sure the audience would love to learn more from you, and if they would like to, connect with you, what is
Yep.
the best place they can reach out to you and have a discussion around user-facing analytics, real time,
Yeah.
learn more about StarRock, CelerData, and much more.
Yes. So Star Rocks here, Star Rocks, this one
Yep.
is the open source project that we are actually the maintainer of the project. We're not the sole contributor. There's a lot of other companies, actually our users um contributes to this project, right?
Yep.
And go to hit GitHub and try it out, and read the docs, and great, right? And starbucks.io is the search Starbucks on Google, you're gonna find it, right? And
Yep.
CelerData is the commercial company that's building the commercialized version of Starbucks, right? With on the cloud, on the public cloud, right? We're now available on AWS and Azure, right? And is the CelerData Cloud is kind of like a cloud version of Starbucks built by the original author and now the main maintainers of the Starbucks project, right? And
Nice.
so you can get support from us. We built the thing. So yeah,
Yep.
and hit up on CelerData.com and cloud.celerdata.com, and that's our SaaS offering. And we actually have two free stuff. So first is
Nice.
a 30-day free trial. The first time you register, we have a 30-day free trial. You can take a look at it. And
Yep.
also we have a forever free developer tier. So with
Okay.
two instances, if you only have two instances, it's forever free. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, go check it out. It's a free trial, and you can
Nice.
request a demo from us. And yeah, it's on AWS, it's on Azure, and go give it a try.
Oh, this is very cool. And
Oh, we have a new website
definitely,
too.
yeah, the website looks
Yeah,
pretty cool. With the real time, this is what we want to look at. So for sure, it
yep,
looks good. And also, I checked this out as well. That's pretty interesting introduction
yep,
on Star Rock in data. And I know there are a lot of resources which you can find your a lot of white papers, case
yep,
studies, uh,
yeah. We have
blogs as
blogs,
well.
and we have yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me talking about
Awesome.
user facing. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
yeah, and blog is a good resources, and we have webinars, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, right? And
Nice.
we archive all of the things we've talked about on screen, right? And yeah, and on LinkedIn, and follow us on LinkedIn, CelerData, and follow
Yeah.
us on Twitter, and we send out, we update very frequently, like once per day at least. And
Yeah.
also, if you want to connect with me, just go to cdashen.com, and it's going to go to my LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
my
So
name.com is
this
going to
is,
go.
yes. Sida Shen, your I've shared the link with you guys as
Yeah.
well. So reach out to him and ask about user facing analytics, talk about real time cloud analytics and otherwise as well. I think Sida likes to talk all the nerd and technical stuff.
Yep.
So don't hesitate to reach out to him. But this was amazing, Sira.
Thank you.
Again, superb episode with you. Always love to have these sessions because it kind of, obviously, CelerData, Star Rocks does so many advanced things. And now with the real time, things are moving so quickly. So it's always good to connect and bring you up here. Thanks again for joining the Rabbit Show.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks to our audience for joining us here and see you very soon.